Welcome to the stream. Aussie Villain is here. I'm excited to talk about some fake sports dynasties from his world on YouTube. I've put a link to his channel in the description. So if you have not seen his channel before, please check it out. So actually, let's start off with just a quick geography lesson for people and talk about your name a little bit. So can you tell us where in the world you're located?
Right now, I'm in Yorkshire. I'm in the UK in Yorkshire. I'm from Sydney in Australia, and I lived in Windsor in Canada for 12 years. So,
oh, okay. I didn't know you were in Canada.
Covered the globe, or certainly the English-speaking globe, anyway. So,
and so, what was the inspiration behind your name? I get the Aussie part.
Yeah, I'm an Aston Villa fan, and they're called the Villains.
Got it. So, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So one of my mates I used to do a podcast with in Canada. He was Canadian. He was a Portsmouth supporter, and they're called Pompey, and his Twitter name was Pompey Canucks. So when I was trying to think of a Twitter name, I just kind of used that logic and adapted it to suit myself. So I'm not evil or anything like that. Because I think that's obviously the first thing where people's heads go. But I'm not that evil, I promise.
Yeah, from watching your stream, I wasn't picking up on the evil part. Kept waiting for that to kick in, and seems like a nice guy all the way through. So you have 3 sims going right now, if I'm following it right on your channel, right? 2 in Football Manager and 1 in Out of the Park Baseball.
That's correct. Yeah, I did have a second Out of the Park Baseball one going when lockdown started here the first time back in March. But I just didn't really have time to keep going with that. So I had to drop that, unfortunately, which was a shame because I was really enjoying it. And I think the people watching it were as well. But there's only so many hours in the day, right? So,
yeah. And so you've got the one going in baseball for the Rockies. And which year are you in right now in the sim again? I can't remember.
We're in the 5th season. So it must be 24, 25. What year do we start? It starts 2020. So it must be in 2025.
2025. And congrats on the perfect game, by the way. Robbie Ray.
I didn't do that much, to be honest. I just sat there and watched. But yeah, Robbie Ray certainly came through for us there.
Have you had any other pitching performances like that in your 5 years with the Rockies?
Not with the Rockies. It's only the 2nd perfect game. Actually, it's the 3rd perfect game. So I had one I'm playing. I continued on my Mets series. So I'm a Mets fan for some reason. Actually, I know why the reason is, but it's not really. So when I first started playing Out of the Park Baseball, I played as the Mets because I didn't really know. I mean, I don't really know any Mets players, but any players I did know at the time played for the Mets. And in that series, we had Syndergaard pitch a perfect game for us. And then I continued that on, and I'm like 12, I don't know how many years, 15 years, 18 years even down the line. I don't even know what year I'm in that one. And I had one guy pitch a perfect game in that. So I've only ever had 3 perfect games ever since I've been playing Out of the Park Baseball. So it was a very nice surprise when Robbie Ray came in for us.
And I liked so this will actually be a good segue into one of the things I really like on your channel. I liked how you started that one off with you in the stadium cheering him on for his perfect game. So you do a lot with green screens, and
got it.
Like you and I, right? It's right behind you now. Is this where you do a lot of your live shots?
This is where the magic happens.
Excellent. So we were talking about this a little bit before we went live, but one of the things I really like about your channel is I think you are doing publicly what I think a lot of us do privately or to people that we're comfortable admitting it to, where when we're managing these teams, whatever the sports dynasty is or whatever franchise we're building in whatever sport, we have these imaginary conversations with ourselves. We can hear the talk radio. We can picture the newspaper headlines. There's press conferences in our head, and you're doing it out there for everybody, which was one of the things that I dialed into right away because I thought this is how I imagine it too.
Well, I like the idea too of actually being able, as the manager, to say what you want to say about the players and about other things that are happening in the game, rather than the sort of like politically correct answer that comes out sometimes. So if I'm doing well, I don't mind going out in the press conference and saying how good I am and blaming other people if we're not doing well, and all the silly conversation, especially Football Manager, because it has a little bit more of that interaction with the players off the field. And, just because the players can be so annoying and they just do stupid things. And I amuse myself. I basically do things that make me laugh and hope that other people are enjoying it as well. So
I'm with you on that. I do think that's one of the keys to doing content in a lot of ways, is that you do have to keep your audience in mind, but also if you like doing it and you're having a good time, you just put it out there and see what kind of a response you get. I've been surprised sometimes at the reaction I've gotten to some of the fake sports stuff I've done, because it blows my mind sometimes that there are other people interested in it. You know, you just kind of think like, I'm going to do this, because for a while before people get into streaming about it, you're usually just doing it by yourself and you're telling maybe a friend or somebody about it. And then you get out on YouTube or a Reddit thread and you start meeting all these other people and realize there are thousands and thousands of these people out there living in their little fake sports world in their heads.
Oh, exactly. I mean, most sports fans are nerds deep down, aren't they? So, you know, it's just kind of the next step in that, really.
Yeah. So the Rocky sim is the one I've probably followed the most.
Yeah.
So the two Football Manager streams, what's the difference between those two streams?
Well, the way I'd like
historically for you, and why you have two going.
I like to have, because I've been playing Football Manager pretty much nonstop since 1998 or something. And when I started doing YouTube, I kind of figured out pretty quickly that I can't have my own sort of offline save going, because it starts to feel like a job, because I want to play, you know, I might want to play my own personal save more than I want to play the ones on YouTube.
Right.
So basically I don't play Football Manager off of YouTube. That what you're seeing, that's me playing Football Manager. That's all I have. So that way, I want to play all the time. But equally, if I just had the one going, I think I get bored of just playing the one. So the way I work is I have one where I'm playing as a bigger team. Usually, it's always been an English team so far. And that way, you can go out, you can go in the Premier League, you can splash the cash, buy the big players, you know, and sort of really, you know, have some fun with it that way. And then I do one with a smaller team that should have no business being even a professional team, and try and build them up and see how far we can go. So last year I did that in Wales, and we ended up a team called Bala Town. It's from a village. It's got like 2,000 people in it or something. And we ended up, I think we got to the Champions League knockout rounds a couple of times. But we could never quite get there. Probably another 5 or 10 seasons we might have been able to win it, but we just ran out of time. The new Football Manager came out. And this year we're doing it in Northern Ireland with a team called H&W Welders. And apparently, I didn't know this, but apparently Harlan and Wolf Welders, or whatever the actual name is, they're the people that made the Titanic, which I didn't know
that.
Yeah, so that's, I mean, I'd love to say that's the reason I chose them. It's not. It's just because I love the idea of a football team being based behind like a little welder's, like, you know, shop. But yeah, apparently that's the people that made the Titanic. So I'll claim that's the reason why we chose them, but it's not.
So in that sim, are you the same manager that you were in your previous sim, where you were with, which team was it you were with before? Bartlett Town?
Bartlett Town. Well, I mean, I start from, because in Football Manager, in football in general, there's coaching badges. So you can start with sort of a fully qualified, like you'd see any of the top coaches have, or you can start down at the bottom with basically no experience. No one knows who you are, and you have to work your way up and get the coaching badges and all that kind of stuff. So I start sort of at the bottom with the club, so that in the game, my manager is building up with the club as well. Right. And that way it makes it a little bit more realistic, because the players don't respect you to start with. So you've got to earn the players' respect in that as well as you go. So it's the same in the sense that we started at the bottom, but it's different I mean, it's a completely new sort of avatar, or whatever you would call it.
Got it. Okay. So totally new character. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah. Yeah. There are a lot of features. And I think you commented on the stream I did with Brian Shea, where we talked about the differences between Football Manager and Out of the Park Baseball. Yeah, you mentioned the way you can interact with the players, or some of the things you can do as a coach. And I do think there are certain features in Football Manager that, you know, I'd love to see Out of the Park add. Is there anything in particular about either of those games, having played them both?
Yeah,
that you
I mean,
wish the other one had?
If you combine them both, I think you just about have the perfect game. I'd love to see, because I'm currently having the problem with the Rockies in that our hitting coach just suddenly retired on me. And I can't find a hit. Our hitting's gone completely through the floor this season. The only thing that's really changed is the hitting coach. But there's no way to tell. I think I hired the hitting coach of the Braves, who had won the World Series twice in 3 years. And he came in and he was horrible. Our batting had dropped sort of 30 points or whatever. I'm not sure whether it is, but it dropped from sort of, say, just below 300 to about 250. And so I sacked him and got another one in, and he's even worse. So the coaching, I feel like the coaches are just really, really luck of the draw as to what you get. There's no real way to tell. So I'd like if Out of the Park Baseball could do that, and then a little bit more of the sort of off the park interaction with players would be good, I think. But I'd love to see football. Like, I love an Out of the Park Baseball. You can go to the history and see like the top 10 in every category, pitching and batting. I'd love if Football Manager could do something like that. I'd love them to be able to do the historical thing as well, but I don't think that's realistic in Football Manager because there's so many leagues. I just don't. I mean, the game would take years to download, never mind to play. So I don't think it's probably feasible. But that's a really cool feature. I haven't actually used it yet now, the park, but it's something I'm probably going to do in the near future. Because I mean, if you haven't seen my channel before, I played baseball as a kid, but I don't really know anything about it. So I'd like to think I'm a little bit better now than when I first started. But if I was to go back to even the 90s, I probably wouldn't know anybody. There'd be the big names I'd recognize, but I don't know who plays. Even now, there'll be players that I'll find them and they'll they'll be like multiple time All-Stars and I've never heard of them, which probably drives some people crazy. But for me, it's sort of a big journey of discovery. So
that sounds like the way I felt playing Football Manager.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I've only gotten into that in the last year. I don't have 21 yet, but at some point here, maybe when some of my Out of the Park Sims run their course, maybe I'll get back into that.
Oh, but 21, it's such a big step up. It is. I know a lot of people have said this. It's by far and away the best one. The actual gameplay, like when the game's playing out, it's just phenomenal. I mean, it's not FIFA levels, like in terms of graphics, but just the movement of the players and what they do. It's the best one they've ever done by a long way. So it's definitely worth it, I would say. But
yeah, they do seem to have come a long way just in the last couple years. But this one, when I saw the new one come out and when people started putting it on YouTube and on Twitch right away, you could see, a clear difference. And I wonder how close they're trying to get to what FIFA does.
I mean, ideally, I think that's the standard that they've got to try and reach, because even when I did like Out of the Park Baseball, it does do my head in a little bit sometimes, where the graph, like the animation it's just not matching up to what's actually happening.
Right.
And I've had people, when I do like my sort of first impressions video of that, just say like, this is crap. Like, how can you, because if you just see the graphics and you're used to like the MLB, like the PlayStation games or whatever, they're not good. I mean, that's not what the game is. That's not like that. That's not why you're playing the game. But when people that are sort of looking at it from sort of a should I buy this point of view, and that's what they're seeing, that it's just, I think both games they've got to aim for that. But realistically, it's not why you play the game. And if somebody's not going to play it because of that reason, then they probably wouldn't like it anyway. But I forget what you asked me. But anyway.
No, yeah. My brother and I have talked about that a lot. We don't play Out of the Park for the same reasons that we'd want to play MLB The Show. We play it for the statistical side of things, the analytical side, the strategy. Yeah. And if we want, as my brother says, if I want to throw a controller at the wall, I'll go play one of those games on my Xbox.
Yeah, see, I can't. Baseball and cricket games are the same. I can't play them if you're playing as the player, because I swing at everything.
Right.
And so it's the same in like baseball or cricket. I either get out, like strike out in baseball, or hit a home run. And in cricket, I either get out or eventually I get out in cricket, because that's the way that the game works. But I usually don't last very long. So I end up just I just get annoyed with them and don't bother. I just don't enjoy them. But the strategy management side of as baseball, particularly, I think it's just a sport that lends itself to it. So
I agree. And when you got started making videos for YouTube, you were doing tutorials about Football Manager, right? Teaching people how to play the game.
I still do those, but I think what's happened is there's a lot of people now. I mean, Zealand he has a channel basically that does that. And the videos he does are fantastic, don't get me wrong, but I think he's taking a lot of my thunder in terms of tutorials, because the views I get now just aren't what they used to be. And to be honest, he just knows more than I do. I try and do like beginner's guides, so if someone's new to the game, it might help them out a little bit. But I think, as I said, I'm just falling down that old YouTube algorithm now, and not that many people are seeing them. So hopefully, you know, if it'll help people if they do see them. But yeah, that's kind of something that I did when I first started, just to try and help people find the channel as much as anything. Because that's what YouTube is basically. You know, people go there for tutorials, don't they? So
right. That does seem to be the way a lot of people get found. And then if they have other content they want to put in front of people, they're able to do it, but they're reaching people first by providing them something they need. They go there and use YouTube as a search engine to find something.
Yeah.
So that was how you initially started to build your following on YouTube?
I think so, yeah, because I mean, if you do like the Let's Plays, I mean, particularly in Football Manager, there's your big 3 or 4 guys that do that, and that's who YouTube directs them towards. So it's difficult, I think. I did a survey for people that watch my channel, just to try and figure out what I was doing right, what I was doing wrong. One of the things I asked was, how did you find me? And most of them, it was either through a tutorial or through just like a YouTube search. So that's another reason why actually I do try and do a bigger English team when I'm playing, because bigger teams have more fans, so there's more likelihood that someone's going to search, is anybody playing with my team in Football Manager? So that's sort of one of the reasons why I usually play with one of the bigger teams as well, just because you're more chance of being found if you're playing as Manchester United than you are if you're playing as Maidenhead or, you know, random lower team.
Right, using almost some search engine optimization tactics.
In a way, yeah. I always, especially on the beta, I always just do like one of the super clubs for that exact reason, because A, it's a beta save. You're going to be playing it for 2 weeks, so it doesn't really matter who you are. And B, if you know, the more fans you can open yourself up to, then the more chance you have of some of them sticking around if they like what you're doing.
So how long were you doing it before you felt like you really started to get some traction and you had followers? And
yeah, I think I might have lucked out a little bit. I did grow relatively quickly. This last Football Manager, actually, to be honest, I really just didn't notice any sort of kick up at all, which is obviously disappointing. But what I do like is that people have stuck around, so they've sort of started again with me. So that's as important, really, because at least people like what I'm doing and they're sticking around. But previously, I've always had like a relatively big kick up with all the new Football Managers. So, but I mean, when you hit the 1,000 subscribers, that's when you start and feel like, you know, things are heading in the right direction, I think. So that's probably the moment.
Yeah, I think there are those milestones. You get to 100 and you can get the unique URL. And then after that, it's people are saying, when will I get to 1,000? And, you know, I can monetize the channel.
Yeah.
And,
so the thing with when you get to 1,000 is that, and I've been trying to get to 3,000 for at least 6 months now, and it just doesn't seem to be going anywhere. And I'm convinced that YouTube's taking the piss with me, because it's starting to get really frustrating. But yeah, because it's those milestones though, and I'm always conscious of not getting too down, because when I compare myself, like I love doing it, and I would love to be able to call it my job. But so I look at that, like for Football Manager, like your Loki Dokis, Lalujos, Dr. Benji, and they have 50, 60, 70, 80. I think some of them are kicking up to 100,000 subs. So to me, I feel like it's just not, I'm not successful. It's not, this channel's not growing. I'm small, but I'm always conscious of the fact that there's people that will look at my channel and be like, oh, that seems so far away. Like they have the same feelings, not of insignificance, but of, I don't know what the word is, but it's just, there's always a bigger fish, isn't there? So I'm always conscious of not trying to complain too much, even though that's just done for the last minute. Because there's always, there's people that, I mean, everybody puts a lot of time in. Anybody that's done it knows that it's a lot of time. It's a lot of effort. And it can be really disheartening, if people aren't watching. But I always think that the best advice that I heard was when I was starting out is that if you have, say, 10 views on a video, if you had 10 people sitting around your computer watching you play the game, that's not insignificant. And that's, if you think of it of that, it's people that are watching you play a game. If they're in your living room watching you, that's a lot of people. But suddenly when you go on YouTube, it doesn't seem so much. But really, it is. It's 10 people watching you play a game is not. It's not nothing, if you know what I mean.
No, I know what you mean. I think it's good to appreciate the numbers you have, and also to realize, I think not everyone realizes how long some of the people with the big follower numbers have been doing it.
Yeah.
I like to go to one of their channels and I like to sort their videos so that the oldest ones show up first.
Yeah.
And you'll see someone who's been streaming a game or various games multiple times a week for 3 years, 5 years, more than that even. And you'll see that a lot of times the first videos they have will have a decent number of views because they've gotten popular and people will go look at their backlog. But still, some of their early videos are nowhere near where some of the current day videos are. And I just think it's a good lesson in how long it takes to generate awareness and to grow something.
Yeah, no, exactly. Because the way I've always looked at it is I always try and make videos that I enjoy watching. We sort of touched on that earlier. And I figure that if I enjoy watching it, then hopefully I'm not weird and other people will enjoy watching it as well. So I always think that's just the key thing, especially when you're starting out, because no matter what, your first, even like up to 6 months to a year, your videos are not going to be great because you're still learning, you're still figuring things out, you're still finding like what your, I don't know what's the word, but what your presence is, I guess, or your presenting style, like that's all going to take time to come to you. So it doesn't really matter in a way that no one's watching it, because you probably don't want them to. You want them to sort of discover you when you're a little bit more comfortable, you know what you're doing, you're not making the silly errors with sounds being off and screens staggering and all that kind of stuff that happens when you start. So it takes I think 6 months is before you start. I think it's 6 months before the YouTube algorithm actually starts taking you not seriously, but starts sort of recognizing you as somebody who's putting content out relatively consistently anyway. So the first 6 months are they're there to learn and just get better at what you're doing.
Yeah, and I do think there's a big part of it too is at some point just putting yourself out there. If you're thinking about doing it, is to actually just start doing it and not worry so much about, one, the number of viewers you have, but two, don't, try to put out something that's good enough you think people will watch it. But you can perfect it along the way. And I think, actually, I saw this happen personally. I started off by streaming a fake hockey team I was playing with on the Xbox because there was no hockey during the pandemic.
Yeah.
And I had, I think, 9 followers. And I had a few people on Twitter and a few people on Facebook and some friends who were interested in what the team was doing, but just a handful of people. And eventually I started thinking, well, why don't I expand this more and start doing some other sports, but start talking to people like you who are doing this. And I feel like just now, after starting this like last March or April, I'm starting to figure out what I really want my channel to be. But I never would have figured it out if I hadn't started doing something.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's what everybody, anytime someone is giving new YouTubers advice, they always say the same thing, like just start, because it's no matter how well planned you are, it's not going to be good when you start. Just start it. Don't wait till the next game comes out, or don't wait till whatever the deadline is you're giving yourself. Just start it. And it's relative. I mean, it is relatively easy to start. I mean, if I'm a complete, I can't use technology at all. Like my wife has to help me set a lot of stuff up, and if I can figure it out and do it, then literally anybody can, because like I can't even get a new phone and install everything myself. So it is relatively simple, and there's all YouTube tutorials for everything, as I said earlier. So it's easy enough to do.
But you figured out a green screen and you're doing all kinds of stuff in your videos.
I couldn't set up the green screen. I couldn't. Kaylee had to help me with that. But but once I've learned something, then I'm okay. But figuring something out new, that's not my thing.
Yeah. And do you use OBS for your broadcasts?
Yeah. I use OBS. Yeah, it's free. It's the easiest one to use. So
I like it. And I actually only started using StreamYard when I wanted to do the interview style shows, because
Yeah.
I like the comment feature. It makes it really easy to bring two people on screen. I've experimented with that in OBS, and I find it gets a little more difficult. And also, I run into some processing issues with when I'm trying to get my computer to do too much in OBS. So if I'm trying to mix in multiple cameras and a game. So when I use StreamYard, their servers handle a lot of stuff. But I do love OBS.
It's good, to be honest. It's really good.
So yeah, those are the two. I like using those two, StreamYard and then OBS. I've only done one tutorial so far, but I did that in OBS. And yeah, that's a good one for just hitting record, and then you can go back and edit later.
Yeah, exactly.
Tutorials.
Yeah.
How much time do you put into everything you do? Because, you're not just doing a live stream of somebody playing a game like some people are doing. You're recording some of these videos with the green screen.
Yeah, I mean, it can take a while. I usually, I'd probably start at like 9 o'clock in the morning. Like, I'm more of a morning person just because my wife gets up. The cats wake me up because they want breakfast. So I tend to be more of a morning person anyway. So I would start recording about 9 o'clock in the morning. I'd probably be usually done recording, like green screen and everything, by midday. Have everything sort of edited by 3-4 o'clock, and then I'll do like sort of play through to get ready for the next record point the next morning. So it's a full day. Like, it is a full day's work, but the way that lockdown is in the UK right now, I have nothing else to do. So and yeah, my wife, we're going to have a kid in a couple of weeks or months. End of March, so I'm going to be daddy daycare then as well. So,
congratulations!
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so this is kind of going to be my source of income for the next till they go off to school, so we don't have to pay for daycare. So, hopefully, at some point, I'll take off and and people will start and really discover me. But yeah, it is right now. It's definitely a full day's work to get the 3 episodes up and ready to go for the next day. So
have you thought much about, I know this is something I've watched people talk about in YouTube videos, not necessarily for sports related game streaming, but I've heard people talk about it on various topics. But have you figured out at all, like others have tried to calculate, well, if I can just get to this many followers, then I think this would be my full-time job?
I mean, a lot of it is the Patreon support. If you look at and even like the big YouTubers that have, the tens of thousands of followers, I think what my impression of what they tell you is that it's the Patreon support that actually allows them to make it a full-time thing. And the YouTube ads, I mean, my Patreon, as I said, I'm relatively small, and my Patreon is still at least double, if not more, like the ad revenue. So it is. I think it's the Patreon support, and that's why people. I mean, I try not to go on about it too much because I don't want to come across like I'm begging for people to be a Patreon supporter. But I'm genuinely so grateful that I want to try. It's a fine line between trying to mention them and thank them, but then not come across as money hungry, I guess. But then equally, if you don't ask for Patreon support, you're probably not going to get it. So it is a really fine balancing line. But as for a sub number to survive just off the YouTube, I don't know what it is. I really don't. I would imagine you'd need at least 10, 15, 20,000 subs before you could look at doing it just off of the YouTube. And then it depends what sort of lifestyle you want to live as well at that point, I would imagine.
Right. And some people are doing it on two platforms. They're doing live on Twitch.
Yeah.
They have subs over there. And then they'll use YouTube more for highlights and tutorial videos and other things. So they're banking on both places, generating some income.
Yeah, I did toy with Twitch for a bit, but I had a real problem getting it to the stream quality to work for me. And then I just I don't want to say I lost interest, but it was really downheartening because I thought I had everything set up, and then the stream wouldn't be coming across properly, and I went sort of off and on for a bit, and then in the end, it wasn't working for me, so I stopped it. I would like to go back to it at some point, but I think Twitch is one of those things. If you have a lot of people from YouTube or a lot of people that know of you, then I think it can be great fun. If there's people in the chat and they're watching you play and sort of interacting with you, it's great. But when you don't have that and you're sitting there and you can see there's 3 people watching you and no one's using the chat, it becomes a little bit disheartening because you've still got to talk like there's, like there's people watching. You don't know who's watching, and even if they are watching, they're not commenting. So you feel like you're talking to yourself, and it can be a really demoralizing experience as well. But I think if you do have that audience that'll come with you, then it's brilliant. But I think you probably have to you'd probably have to be on Twitch multiple times a week, consistently all the time to build that up. And I'd rather just spend that time making stuff for YouTube. That's just my own personal preference.
Yeah, some of the bigger Twitch streamers, they are, they're on there a lot.
Yeah.
I've noticed, Football Manager is big on Twitch. Out of the Park, not so much.
I did look at that when I was looking at Twitch and when I was starting, and I did look at Out of the Park, and there was nothing there for it at all.
I found that surprising. Well, I know with Football Manager, it's a much bigger game in terms of its popularity, and it's much, has a much more global audience.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of it. But for whatever reason, I feel like I've, run into online, either through YouTube or Reddit, the forums that Out of the Park has. There are clearly a lot of people playing Out of the Park, not as many as playing Football Manager, but enough that I'm surprised there isn't more Twitch activity around the game. Yeah,
I was genuinely surprised. I mean, I don't know if it would work for me to do you Twitch? I don't know if it would work for me to stream Out of the Park baseball just for time zone differences, because people tend to watch in the evening, and I mean over here in the UK that's going to be sort of middle of the night time, so wouldn't really work anyway. But yeah, I was really, because I like to just look and see what other people are doing to sort of get ideas, and not to copy them directly, but even they do something and think, oh, if they did this, that would be really good. I can do that kind of thing. But there was just when I looked, there was nothing on Twitch, and even on YouTube there was a few people, but not really any, nowhere near the number of Football Manager anyway.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and there's some big names. I mean, you mentioned Zealand earlier. He's one who's I watch on Twitch quite a bit, and his is a show, right? He's not just. I almost feel like when his show comes on, it's like I've tuned into an ESPN show.
Oh yeah, no, he's a showman, that's for sure. Yeah, he's brilliant.
So yeah, there's that side of his things where Football Manager is there, and he clearly has the audience who's trying to pick up some tips on how to play the game, or they're into his sim and they're following along with that. But then it seems, he has an audience who's there just no matter what he was talking about, they'd be there. And Football Manager is kind of what's on the screen while he has conversations with them.
I think that's the thing. If you're, because one of the 3 people that got me into YouTube in the first place was Loki Doki, and he's just one of those guys that is just so engaging and entertaining that you would watch him. He could be on. He's one of the people you think, oh, he could be on Gogglebox. Like he's just you'd watch him watch TV. He's just just really, really entertaining and amusing, and I mean in Zealand, I've seen a little bit of him on Twitch, but I've watched more of his YouTube stuff, and he's the same in a sense. He's just got that sort of engaging personality that just kind of draws you in. So that would surprise me at all if he has that sort of following on Twitch as well.
Right. It's almost like, you're listening to a radio show basically, but watching it and they're playing a game.
Yeah. Well, I think he does. I don't know if this is true or not. I think he does do some sports announcing, but I could be wrong on that. But I think I heard that somewhere, because he definitely has that sort of voice. You could see him commentating on a baseball game on a June afternoon kind of thing. He's got that. He's got that voice and that presence in his voice.
I agree. He definitely has the voice. I did see one clip of him doing, I believe it was college basketball.
Okay.
But I don't know if he's currently doing it, but I know at one point he was a sports broadcaster.
Oh, okay.
He's young. He's not that.
Yeah, he's a lot younger than I realized.
He's in, I believe he talked about it during one of his streams about how old he was and that it really surprised people, but I feel like he's in his early 20s still.
Yeah, I saw something where he was saying that he just finished college, probably like this fall, this fall was probably his first his first year out of college. I don't know how many years college he did, but that surprised me. I figured he was a little bit older than that, but that's just course he's got this, of course, of the voice, isn't it? That's the reason. So
totally, that's exactly what I think. I think his voice makes it feel like you're listening to a much more established person than you'd think of
exactly,
right out of college.
Yeah.
So no, there are a lot of good ones out there. He's definitely one I watch on that. I get notifications when he goes live on Twitch, and sometimes I'll just listen if I'm like walking the dog. I'll just even listen to his stream.
Yeah.
So with the segments you do with the green screen, is that stuff you just learn through experimentation over time? And the other thing I wanted to ask about, what was it like the first time you put yourself out there with one of your green screen segments where you're like, oh, just screw it, let's get it out there?
Yeah.
Were you nervous?
Not really. I'm a little bit like that anyway. Just like, if your people don't like it, they don't have to watch it, kind of thing. As I say, it's just stuff that amuses myself. 9 times out of 10, anything you see, I've been giggling the whole time I've been editing it. Like that's kind of the logic behind it. So I wasn't necessarily nervous or anything. I mean, I guess there's a little bit, what are people going to think kind of stuff, but it's more the accents, because they're obviously bad and they're not supposed to be good. But some of them, it's just like I had to retire the Yorkshire guy for a bit because I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't put myself through it. So
you're like you're like a band or a comedian who has to put like the main part of his act or song they've become famous for.
Sometimes the accent has to go away for a little bit, and I can pull back good old Chaz Hogan, the Australian reporter. I can do him. He's easy.
So what other games other than Football Manager and Out of the Park have you been into, either recently or in life? When was it you got into these style of games?
I think like I say, I've been playing Football Manager since 1997 or 90. It was a 97, 98 version of the game that was the first one I had. So I've always, and that was probably about the same time we first got a family computer, to be honest. So I've always been into it. I do massively love Motorsport Manager as well. So if they ever bring out a new one of that, there will be a lot of Motorsport Manager on the channel. But I think that the one they have now is just a little bit too old to get started into. I do like generally PC games. Like I've gone through phases of like Civilization and Age of Empires and all that style of game. Like the Total War games, I'll go through phases of those. But then on the Xbox, I'll play like the Call of Duties and the Halos, and then I like just general racing games as well on there. So like the Formula One games or Forza, those sorts of ones I'll play. That sort of style of game I'll tend to play with a control pad on the Xbox rather than on a PC. And then on the PC, I'll play sort of more your strategy games.
Yeah, Civilization was a big one for me. I really like that game. I'd say non-sports games, that was a big one for me. And Sim City was a really big one
Sim
for me.
City got a little bit too complicated for me. I like the original. I like 2000. And then I think there was one after that I got into for a bit, and it just started to get a little bit too complicated and a little bit too, I don't know, difficult is probably the word. It just lost me a little bit, Sim City. But certainly the older ones I definitely enjoyed of Sim City. Anything like that, generally, I do enjoy. But,
yeah, same here. Anything where where you have levers you can pull and then see what it does. But, I've always enjoyed that. And I wanted to ask you about Motorsports Manager. I've seen that game just in videos where people have maybe shared. I think I may have seen it on Twitch actually, and it looked interesting to me, and I wondered if it was the type of game I could get as into as I have with Out of the Park or Football Manager. It's a similar game but with motorsports.
Yeah, essentially, yeah. Like the strategy's obviously in you sort of set up the car and what's like race strategies and that, like when to qualify, there's weather conditions and that, so you have to make those sorts of decisions. And then off the track, it's sort of the building up at the factory and getting the better parts and upgrading the car and stuff like that. So if you do like motorsport, it's definitely something you can get into. And to be honest, it's been out for a while now. You could probably pick it up pretty cheap if you don't already have it. But I I have no idea what it costs now. I got it when it first came out. I got into it when it was on just a phone app. So I had it on my phone. I used to play it on that. Then when they came out with a proper PC version, I was all over it. So I'm hoping they do come out with a new one, because it's unlicensed as well. But so it's all sort of made up tracks, which is fine, because it's fine. It doesn't need the real tracks, but it would be good if they could sort of license a few things and sort of expand it beyond just. I think because I have the sort of basic version with just the Formula One style sort of road up the system, but there was one with sports cars as well. I think they came out, but I haven't played that. So if they could sort of get more into that, even do like a NASCAR or like a stock car, wouldn't be NASCAR, but a stock car sort of world as well, then it could. There's certainly a lot of potential for it to grow there, I think. So. Yeah,
if they had a NASCAR style, a NASCAR version in the game, I think it could be huge in the US.
Yeah.
So you mentioned, you were hoping they'd release other versions. Is that not a game where they release a new version every year right now?
No. The one that it's called Motorsport Manager 2, but I think that's because the first one's the sort of the mobile game. I'm under the impression that it was a relatively successful game for them, so I'd be surprised if there wasn't a Motorsport Manager 3 at some point, but I don't know if there's anything. I Google it from time to time, and I haven't really seen anything that is in the plan, so maybe it will happen, maybe it won't. I'm just speculating.
I'll have to check it out. Yeah, there's a few games I Google like that to see if they have made updates, or I like looking to see if there are ways I can play old games I played when I was a kid, now that so many of those have been recreated online.
Yeah,
there was the game I used to love as a kid was before SimCity probably existed. I had the game Project Space Station, where you were.
I've heard of that one.
You were managing NASA's space shuttle program, and you were building a space station that was in orbit.
Oh, okay.
And I have no idea if the game would be impressive now. When I was.
They're always disappointing. I remember that one of the first games I ever got on our PC was a Formula One game. I think it was called Grand Prix 2. And I used to love it. And honestly, at the time, it was the best thing I've ever seen. And I went back to play it. Maybe actually probably is a long time ago now. But the graphic, it ruined it. Like the graphics, you could literally see like the little square pixels, and it was horrible. It was so bad. And it's just like, it ruined it for me. So maybe just leave yourself with the happy memories.
I've seen games I used to play, even just the old hockey games that now you look at them compared to the EA Sports NHL game. I look at the game I played when I was probably 10 or 12 years old, and I don't even think you had a full team on the ice. I think I had like a goalie and 3 skaters or something.
Well, it's like when you go back and you see like Super Mario and Sonic the Hedgehog and that, and it's just like little spinning dots, and it's just, at the time it was brilliant, but you look back now and it's just like, how did I spend so much time playing this?
I've had the same feeling, and I just think, how was I into this? And because at the time it was the coolest thing you'd ever seen.
Exactly, yeah.
And now, we just, over just a few years, you can kind of blow everything out of the water that was cool just a few years before that. So
yeah, exactly.
And then when you look back 2 to 3 decades at video games, it's astonishing what's happened.
Well, even if you go back and play like the original Call of Duties, that like it's the same sort of thing, and that's the same company in the same sort of sequence of games. But I mean, that's the original Call of Duty is probably getting on a bit now anyway. But I mean, it's like night and day. So
definitely, yeah. So what's next in your streaming plans? Continue with the 3 seasons that you have going, or do you have anything else in the works?
Yeah, well, usually with the Other Park Baseball, I try and go till we win a World Series. It's never really taken this long, and we still don't look like we're anywhere near getting past the Dodgers, never mind winning a World Series.
Right.
So I have a horrible feeling that we might have Out of the Park Baseball 22 before we have a World Series. So the Rockies might have to go on we'll try again another time list, I think. But when the new one comes out, I've got a couple of ideas actually to try and maybe make it a little bit more difficult. Kind of like limiting the players that we can sign or something like that. So I might experiment a little bit with that, or go back and do sort of like an old like use the historical part of the game. So I'll make decisions on that closer to when the new game comes out. Because I don't even know if it's going to be delayed or not with the whole COVID thing. I'm not sure if it's going to be released as normal anyway. I haven't looked into it, but it wouldn't surprise me if it was late. You couldn't blame them. And then as for Football Manager, we'll keep going as long as we don't get sacked, which is always the caveat in anything.
Right.
We'll keep going with the Welders one. HW Welders will just keep going all the way through Football Manager. And then if and when we win the Champions League with Sheffield Wednesday, then we'll move on to something else. But I haven't decided what that is yet. We'll see how much time we have, how long it takes and what there is. But last year I followed in the real life footsteps, career-wise, of what a manager did. And that was fun. So I might look to do something like that again, or I don't know. I'll see what's happening at the time. And I usually ask for feedback from people, if what any ideas, and see what's a popular idea. Because ultimately, I'll play with almost any team. I won't play as Birmingham City, and I won't play as Melbourne Victory. But outside of that, I'm happy to play as anybody. So ultimately, I don't care who I play as. It's just what people want to see. So.
Yeah, in Football Manager, I played with it enough to learn that I need to be in a league where there is promotion and relegation. I did an MLS,
yeah,
a couple of teams in MLS, and it just wasn't the same. And I couldn't quite figure out how all the player movement worked there.
I struggle
not really as fun.
I'm a little bit better with the whole trades and that now with playing out of the park baseball. Because before, I've never been exposed to trades before. I don't know how that works. So I've got a little bit better with that now. But MLS is just a whole different. And this, because I find salary caps can be a little bit annoying as well. But MLS is a whole different challenge. Yeah, I did play a series with NYCFC, the non-Red Bulls New York team.
Right.
And that was fun. I did enjoy it, but at the same time, it does your head in trying to figure out, salary caps and trades and all that kind of stuff. So
how many international players you can have, I think, is another
but then
one.
you can trade for, because I had the same amount of international players, and I was releasing one guy because he was old, and I was going to sign another one. But when I released him, I didn't have that international slot anymore, and it was. It was too much for my poor little brain, that one. So
yeah, I tried it with two teams there, and then I eventually just resigned from the second team, and I got a job in a Welsh league because I needed to get back over across the ocean.
Yeah,
to the leagues I liked coaching in. So you mentioned with Out of the Park and the new version, and I had not really thought about how COVID might affect the release schedule. One thing I'm also interested to see with the new release is this will be the first one, I believe, since the company was sold. So I didn't know the
company was sold.
So there's another company that bought Out of the Park Developments sometime in 2020.
Are they going to make their NFL game now then, I wonder? Because I've been waiting for that, because I want to try that, because I have no idea how NFL works. So
I don't know. I'm not sure. I looked into this other company a little bit, and I believe it's called Com2Us, or COM, the number 2, and then US. And I forget where they're based. I want to say that it's a Korean-owned company. I can't quite remember, but they have a baseball game that I have not played or even seen screenshots of. I just noticed it on their website. That looks like it would have been some sort of a baseball strategy game. So, and they have several other titles and types of games I'm not really familiar with. So, but it looks like they've been a successful company in terms of the things they talk about on their website with, games being, they talk about sales numbers and other things and sort of like the news section of the website. So it looks like they've had some success with other titles.
Yeah.
And I just hope they don't change the game too much. I hope that if, for example, they decide to do what Football Manager's done and try to make the gameplay better to try to attract an audience that, wants more of that, that's okay. But I just hope they don't lose any of the strategy side of things, and that they keep trying to push things forward there for those of us who play this game for, those reasons, not for the gameplay.
Yeah. I don't even think that, the actual game itself doesn't need to be that much better. What annoys me is things like when the ball will go out into left field and then they'll throw them out at first, and just
Right.
you get glitches like that, or everything at the plate. It's either a really close play, or it's out by a mile. There's no, it's very almost like, well, I mean, I'm not a computer program, but it seems like it's very basic programming, and either they're safe and they get there just before the ball, or they're out by a mile. It doesn't seem very. It seems very basic in that sense, but I mean, I'm not one that could. I don't know how to do it, or what it would take to fix it. Maybe it's really expensive, but it's those sorts of things that I'd like to see if they could improve that. But as I said, overall, I mean, it's an amazing management game, just because there's so much statistical stuff. I mean, I still find stuff now that I'm like, oh, that's cool. I didn't even know that was there. Like
the depth is amazing. The depth of the game is amazing, and you can just continue to learn things no matter how long you've played it, about how to, just there's so much how to manage player development. Maybe you've built a great team, but how did you do it? Did you through free agency and trades, and then you can focus on more on your farm system. You can get better at drafting. There's so much you can do in that game. Even when you think you kind of know a lot of the things,
that's what the best
there are to figure out.
Games that there's no right way to win. Like like you play. I'll go back to Call of Duty. Like there's a way to win the game, and then it's kind of finished. Whereas there's no right way to do it, and there's no end point. You win the World Series, come back and do it again next year, and then come back and do it again the next year, and at some point you're not going to do it. So it's just right. It's that open end. There's no right way. No, and if anything, I'm showing there's no right way to do it or wrong way to do it, because somehow I managed to do it. So
it's a really fun game with, like you said, there's not a moment where you say, okay, I've completed this game. I think for a lot of people, it's kind of driven by two things. They think I need to win a World Series, and when does the next version of the game come out? Yeah,
I mean, I stop at a World Series basically because you don't want to become stale. So that's the reason that on YouTube I'll stop at a World Series, and then I did make the mistake with the Mets of coming back to try and defend it, and we went on for about another 3 or 4 years, and we did not defend it, so we didn't win another one. So it's a good high point to finish off on. Always leave them wanting more, right? So it's a good
it is
to finish off on.
It is. It's hard to step away if you come back after you win. I found that's a good point for me to step off and sort of evaluate how much time I'm spending playing the game and things like that. Because if you win it, and this goes for a lot of video games, but you win that championship, and then that's a good point to say, okay, I'm stepping away. But if you come back in to see if you can repeat, you're trapped all over again.
Especially if you don't repeat, and then you
exactly. You're like, maybe we could just win 2 in 3 years. Oh no, I have to. This is about my legacy now. I have to. I can't go out like this.
Exactly,
and all of a sudden, it's 5 years since you won your last title.
And you're that fat, washed-up manager on the bench. It's talking about glory days of the past, and you're looking back at all your historical stats and all the guys that used to be good for you, and they're still overpaid and sitting there doing nothing.
One of the hard parts about stepping away from a sim, if a new version of the game comes out, is the players you become attached to.
That's what people. Yeah, I mean, I used to think I was like, there was times it's more for me for Football Manager, because I played that more just generally. But there'll be guys that'll retire, and I'll be genuinely upset that they've retired. At least now you can keep them on in your coaching stuff, which you didn't used to be able to do. But yeah, I've had that now. The park baseball, I kept. This is going back to my Mets one, which I kept playing sort of offline. I kept Syndergaard. The poor guy just wanted to die, I think, and I still had him in the bullpen, paying him $20 million a year, because I was looking at the records, and he was so close to. I think it was WAR. He was really, really close on WAR, and he was close on strikeouts, and then his WAR started going backwards. So we had to let him go. So.
But yeah, you want to hang on to those players. My brother and I have talked about this in his fake Orioles series that he's running. He had guys, when they start moving up the record books for the team, and you think, I really need to let go of this guy if I want to focus on winning the World Series. I've got a young player who's much better, but you want to keep them around because you've had them for 10 seasons.
Yeah, I had that too with Ronnie Mauricio, and he was getting close to all David Wright's records. And then I signed him up. I didn't, because when I was playing it, I didn't know what all the like player options and that were, so I just let him have whatever they wanted. So apparently he had this, because I thought he had 2 years left, and he was like really close to all these records. He was second in everything, and then apparently had a player option. And he'd left to go to free agency, and I couldn't afford to sign him back. And at that point, I probably didn't want to sign him back anyway because he was past his best. But it's just so now, every time I look at the records, I'm so depressed because it's just Mauricio is so close to everything, and he's still second to David Wright. So
it also makes you really appreciate how tough it is to get some of those records, because you can have guys who look like they can be 24 years old, and you think, oh my gosh, this guy is going to just crush every record in my franchise's leaderboard. And then you have injuries happen, or I think even worse, I don't know which is sadder, the injury that kind of takes down a guy's career, or where you just think you have a great player, and when you look back, you had 3 years where they were, all-star caliber, and you think, I have a Hall of Famer on my team right now. And
I'm pretty sure I've got a Hall of Famer, I think, in my New York Mets series. I think we drafted him, I think, when I was still online. But he's going to break the all-time Major League strikeout record, I think. Like, he gets 350 strikeouts every season. He's just a strikeout. He gives up home runs like there's no tomorrow. I think he's broken the league record for most home runs given up in a year. But he strikes out everybody. And, I'm convinced he's going to break the all-time strikeout record. I think he's 30 right now. He's an Iron Man, and he has over 3,000 strikeouts. So he's almost halfway there after 7 or 8 years or something. So I'm hopeful he's definitely going to be a Hall of Famer, 100%. So I'm really excited about that. But
that was in your Mets sim.
Yeah. It was Tabit, I think, or something. If anyone's watched it, they might remember. We would have drafted him right towards the end of the series, I think. But
got it. So do you go, even once you're no longer putting those on YouTube, do you ever go back and play any of those to see if you can?
I always have the intention to do it. I was going to do it with Barla Town on Football Manager, but I never, especially when it's the old game. That I think what kept me going with the Mets one is that I could move it over to the newer game. I could keep sort of bringing it with me, kind of thing.
Right.
And then because I am a Mets fan, it's that one. That's kind of what I'll play when I'm not recording stuff for YouTube. I like Out of the Park baseball because I can just sit in front of the TV and just sort of sim games one at a time and change the lineup, so I don't have to think about it too much.
Right.
So that's usually what I'll play in front of the TV. But I don't, not usually. No, that's the only one that I've sort of carried on with, despite my best intentions every time of saying I'll keep going with it, but I never do.
Yeah, with Out of the Park, you don't, it's a lot more simming of games, and you don't have to think about your training schedule and all those.
Yeah, no, exactly. And you're not, because you can sort of sim games in a way that you can't really with Football Manager. You don't have to. You never really have to pay attention. If you don't change the lineup one day, chances are it doesn't really matter if that you've got things wrong in that sense. And then I'll watch if we make the playoffs, I'll sort of watch the postseason games in full. But otherwise, I just sim my way through, and you can fly through seasons. It's a lot of fun too. The players develop really quick, so.
Right, it is an easier one to sim through quickly. I found sometimes Out of the Park, I'll start simming too quickly and not paying attention to some of the numbers I need to be paying attention to. The more I've gotten into the advanced statistics, the slower my sims have gotten, I think.
Yeah.
Because I spend a lot more time looking at some of the other stats and really trying to think about, should I send this guy back down? Is this a guy I should be trading now? So I think as I've started to understand more stats, I've slowed the gameplay a little bit.
Yeah, see, I am hopeless with the stats, and anyone that's watched me play Out of the Park, they'll know that I'm hopeless with the stats. But what I usually do is I'll sim one game at a time, and I'll sit there and I'll have the batting. If we're facing a lefty or a righty, I'll just switch the things over for the last week or 2 weeks or whatever it is, and just if their average is still looking decent, then I'll keep them in the lineup. If not, I might give somebody else a go, and that's pretty much the level of which, just what's their batting average. Maybe if I'm feeling fancy, I'll look at the on-base percentage, but that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I've been thinking about it more. my brother did a couple tutorials, and one of them is something like the batting stats that matter.
Yeah, I think I saw that actually. Yeah.
Yeah, and that one got me rethinking some things because, I'm always asking him questions about what to do. He's played the game a lot more than I have.
Yeah.
But then once he did that video, it was, I could pause and rewind what he said. So I've gotten more obsessive with some of my stats now that I have that as a resource.
I think I have to purposely not do that because otherwise it'll take me forever to get through anything. So I like to remain blissfully ignorant on that one, I think.
Yeah, it will, at least for me, it's definitely slowed me down as I've thought more about the roster moves I'm making or who's in the lineup and those sorts of things. So.
I'm always too loyal to players as well. That's my fault. In both games, I'm too loyal. So
I do like how there's a lot more you can do with the player interaction in Football Manager where you can, have the conversations with the guys or talk to them during the game. That helps me in that game. Whereas in Out of the Park, you can change the players or you can change the coaches.
Yeah.
So you can do some things with, the lineups when you play them. I'll move guys. I've found this has been helpful for me lately in the Zephyr series I've been doing. I've been playing with the pitching roles a lot more than I have in the past, using a stopper. And then I've taken some guys that are out of options and I can't send them down to AAA, but I still think they might have something left. And I'll use them I'll set it up so that they will never pitch in high leverage situations. And then that way I can kind of keep a guy on the team to just eat up some non-critical innings. So that's another one I've played around with lately.
Yeah, I might need to use that a bit more, I think. Maybe I can use Herman Marquez in that role because he's just a sick note.
He's not doing well?
He's been injured. Every season, I think, he's been injured. And it's becoming a joke this year. Like, he comes back, first game back, he injures himself again. So I've written him off. He's a free agent.
I had a couple players this season. I was hoping I could just get them into spring training and see if they had anything left. Billy Hamilton and
my Blue Jays side, World Series winning Billy Hamilton.
Yeah, I had Hamilton and I had Simmons as a shortstop. So I had the two of them, great for defense. Simmons has a little bit of a bat. They both ended up with long injuries. And when they came back, I think I was hanging on longer than I should because I had plans for both of them to be, part of that team for a while. And I ended up just trading them both away I had to retain most of their salaries and traded them for some prospects because nobody wanted them. They were refusing to be demoted to the minors. My manager wasn't going to play them.
I have that with Brendan Rodgers right now. He refuses to go down, and there's nothing to trade him for. So,
yeah, I get to a point with those guys where it depends on what their salary is, and how many years I'd be stuck with the salary. But sometimes you get to the point where you want to release them, but then if you release them, you're on the hook for the salary.
What I do? I just keep putting them on waivers and then take them back, put them on waivers again. So they just that really pisses them off. So.
And then eventually, do they go to the minors or eventually?
No, they just do that till their contracts out. Or actually, no. What usually happens is I get annoyed of having to keep putting them on waivers and they release them. Is what usually happens. But I'll do it for a good 6 months.
Yeah, before I do the release, I've been shopping them, and I'll tell people I'll keep 90% of their salary.
Yeah, that's what I should do.
Then you can at least get a prospect back for it sometimes.
Yeah.
Because if you release them, you're on the hook for 100%. So
yeah, and every series I've had so far, one of my starting pitchers, the star starting pitcher, has gone down with an injury. It was DeGrom at the Mets. Yeah, it was Rue in Toronto. Who was it? I can't remember who it was at the Mariners, but one of the star pitchers there had a serious injury first season, and now it's been Marquez at the Rockies. Always, it's every series. One of my star pitchers has done himself an injury, and I've had to end up getting rid of them because they're just on this massive salary and there's nothing I can do about it.
Yeah, I've had, injuries are tough in that game. I just hired a new trainer in my current series who's better than the last one. So I'm hoping it solves some of my problems because last season, I think at one point I had 6 really critical players all injured at the same time. I had the 2 guys get basically the career ending injuries, at least. So yeah, we'll see what the new guy can do here in the new
It's
season.
always after they sign a massive contract as well, never beforehand.
Exactly. Yeah, you've got him for a number of years, or you decide they're the guy and you trade the other guy who might have been able to take the role.
Yeah.
That's how it goes usually. All right. Well, hey, thanks for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, absolute pleasure. Anytime.
And I'll be following the channel. I'll be following the Rockies series to see what else they can do the rest of this season. They got a ways to go to climb the ladder there, but
yeah, I'm slightly concerned we might be looking for a new job at the end of the season, but we'll see how we go.
Let's see if we can get somebody to start a fake sports talk radio show where they can be lobbying for you to keep your job.
There we go. See, I'm asking, does Bruce Crabb stay or does Bruce Crabb go? And I've been reliably informed that if Bruce Crabb goes, there's a riot, so he has to stay. We're going down with Bruce Crabb.
You guys are a package deal. Yeah, if Mim's watching, he can maybe start a sports talk radio show about the whole ordeal.
There we go.
All right, Aussie Villain, thanks a lot. I will keep checking out your channel, and maybe we'll chat again sometime.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, take it easy.
See ya.
Bye.